Good morning. Today is the seventh day of Adar, the traditional day of passing of Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's also the 16th of February. We're continuing with Machatzit HaShekel. Okay. So we started talking about what it means to shepherd faith. We said that the most important faith, what does it mean that we have faith? Faith in creation. Hitchatshuta Bria. And we said that by the Baal Shem Tov, faith in creation is not something that happened in the past. It's rather an overwhelming feeling that people have, and that's what he meant.
Continuous present.
Right, that God is continuously bringing creation into being. It doesn't mean necessarily that at every moment the whole thing that was in the 6 days of creation is unfolding. That's not necessarily what it means at all. It means that that same act of bringing being into being, which then took 6 days, now happens at every moment. But it's the act of bringing it into being. So it retains its character from before. A lot of people ask, so why is it that every moment is the same? We don't mean to say that there's no continuity. What we mean to say is that there's an ever constant act of creation from God in the sense of bringing creation into being. And he says that this is the overwhelming feeling that Jews have, even though they're never taught this, because this comes from the divine soul. It's an inheritance from Abraham. And we said that this is like the Oman, or the Omen, the person who shepherds, who stewards a child from the time that he's suckling. שמרגילו מעט מעט מקטנותו עד שנעשה כמו טבע בנפשו. So we're in the 2 lines beneath the Tilim Lamed Vav Yud. Okay? And he teaches him slowly until it becomes a second nature, or a first nature even, in his psyche. That's the way he thinks. לכל אשר יחפוץ ללמדו. And so that's what a steward does. He guides the child until he is fashioned the way that he wants him.
I heard a story when I was a wee kid growing up in England, becoming from of royal family a nurse to look after a newly born child, one of the kings or the princes, right? And the queen came over to order this young lady to look after the child and bring him up because she didn't have any time. And the child was a month or 2 months old. And the lady who took the child said, "I'm very sorry, you asked me too late."
Too late.
It's too late. When you bring a child out, you have to bring him out from the word go. She didn't know about Tas Mishpacha, but we know that it's even before that with Tas Mishpacha.
Even before they're conceived.
But growing up a child is a full-time job from the word go.
Okay, so that, he says, that's what a shepherd does. And so in the same way that a steward does this for a young child, a shepherd is supposed to do this for his flock. לכל אשר יחפוץ ללמדו. כמו כן, הדרך משל, אחדות השם באבות. In the same way, what we call the unification of God, the unity, the oneness of God, regarding the avos, the patriarchs, הנקראים אומנים, and they're called stewards, הם אשר המשיכו בכללות נשמות ישראל, ומסתעפים מהם מעט מעט, כאומן את היונק, עד שהוטבע אחדות השם בכנסת ישראל בבחינה טבעית, כאילו רואה בעין השכל ממש. So they brought together this whole concept of the unity, the oneness of God into the souls of the Jewish people. This is what the patriarchs did. What do we mean? So you could say that it's historical. It's a historical act. That's how they were, and this is how we were brought up. And it just passes down from generation to generation. Or it's something already, like he wants to imply, that it's something ingrained in each one of us. Meaning, we never met the patriarchs. We don't, and it could be even that our parents were not brought up this way, literally. but it's ingrained inside the nature of the divine soul of every Jew.
I hate to get into psychology. Would this be like the collective conscience?
So one way of thinking of it is like Jung's collective consciousness, that's what's guiding this.
Okay.
Another way of saying it is, again, it's like some kind of Lamarckian evolution, where traits that are psychological become part of the DNA, as it were, of the person. Now, we don't know enough about DNA to say whether that's the way it works or not, but I'm saying it's like that at least. Okay. In any case, so that is the oneness of God that is engraved in and ingrained in the nature of the Jewish soul. לכך המקבלים שפע זו נקראים אמונה. לכך המקבלים נפש זו נקראים אמונה, וזהו וראה אמונה. And here he calls it sustenance. It's a type of sustenance, he says. It's coming from the outside. That's the way he sees it.
You mean from the Avot?
From the Avos. It's continuing down. That's how he's saying it. Yeah. And that's called emunah. And that's the meaning of emunah. Again, we said emunah doesn't mean faith necessarily. What emunah means, according to this derivation, the derivation appears in the Midrash, is stewarding. It's training or training.
Oman. Okay.
וזהו אמונה, פירוש מעלת משה, יתירה לעבוד בזה, דהיינו שהוא הזן ומפרנס את אמונה זו. So now he says, so the patriarchs, they were the ones who started this, and Moses, he's superior to them. His level is superior. Why? Because they only started it, but he's the one who's shepherding it. Meaning from generation to generation, it's like Moses' presence, his continued presence in the world, is what supports this faith. It's what takes it out to pasture, not to die, but it's pasture to graze. He gives it its sustenance so that it continues to foster in the people's minds.
But we don't see Shimon
right. And okay, Moshe. Right. Right.
Except on Shabbos we mention Moshe.
Right. So why?
I don't know. I don't know.
So on the face of it, the reason we don't mention Moshe Rabbeinu is we don't mention him in Shmoneh Esrei at all, only on Shabbos, like you said, is because the whole week, what we're doing is we're focusing on the attributes that are connected to the patriarchs. When we say Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, we don't mean just the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. What we mean to say is Chesed, Gvur, and Tiferes, and that's what the first three blessings are about. And then you might say, so where's the Torah in all of this? Torah is something else. Torah is, what's Torah? Torah is, it's not Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes. It's the Moichin. It's the Chabad. It's a Chabad. So when would we have a chance to say this? So we say that on Shabbos there's time to talk about Torah. So that's why Yismach Moshe, that's why we begin Shabbos morning with Yismach Moshe. Why? Because we're talking about the Torah that he received. That it's like that the time for Torah is like on Shabbos. The rest of the week you're working with these other emotional attributes, and it's not so connected. Yeah, it's not a great answer to a good question, but
also perhaps the suppression in the Haggadah we Pesach.
Right, he's not there either.
Because he, Chas v'Shalom, could have
replaced God, as it were.
Right.
So, but in this case, we do have three people that we mentioned. So the question is, why don't we mention them? וביאור הדבר הוא להיות כי האמונה היא בבחינת ממלא כל עלמין סובב כל עלמין לבד. דהיינו, איך שהוא יתברך מהווה מאין לאש במידת מלכותו, כיוון שבואר במצווה כ"ה פרק א', שעל ממלא כל עלמין נאמר בישראל חזה, והאמונה היא בבחינת סובב כל עלמין, שהוא למעלה מהחוכמה, ואינו מתלבש באמין כנשמה בגוף. So now he says something very interesting about Emunah. Emunah is limited. It has to be. Why is it limited? It can only go as far as, our mind's eye can reach.
Okay, yes.
There has to be some kind, if I believe in something, or if I have this ingrained character in me, it must be something that is conceivable in some way. It has to be something I can conceive of. So he says emunah is limited to what we call the playing field of creation. That's why the first emunah is that God created the world. But it's not an emunah about God himself. The only thing I say about God himself is I can't perceive him. That's my first emunah about God. My first faith about God, or my first inner sense about God, is that I can't describe. There's no words to describe. There's no thoughts to perceive. It doesn't exist. So emunah is limited to what we call the surrounding light and the filling light. Or the surrounding light, the integrated light, the transcendent, the immanent. That's as far as it can go. It can't reach beyond creation, as it were. It can't reach beyond the playing field of creation. Right? It can't. How could it?
I believe that God created the world.
And that's it.
But he created it.
And you can't say anything beyond that.
Go back.
Right? You can't go further. Emunah doesn't try to advocate for something that cannot be perceived by the human mind in any way. Mm-hmm. Everything it says is all our faith in the end is something that the mind can understand. If you can't understand it, what are we talking about? It says so much. It says that in the future, right, Ayin lo ra'ata elokim zulatecha, that what there will be in the world to come, we mean the world of after the reincarnation of the dead, that we don't know. Because we can't, as far as we can go is the reincarnation, that's it. But exactly what that world is going to look like, that we don't know. You could paint whatever picture you want. It's very interesting. Same thing we were talking about yesterday. The Moses was 10 feet or 10 cubits high. So there's all these kids' books now that have like a description of the time of Mashiach. So why is it, that was another thing in this letter that Tzvi Freeman, we didn't talk about it yesterday in the end, I talked about it later in the second class. But there's this mother that was complaining that her kid is now in Chabad school, and it's very good and so on and so forth, but he's coming back with these crazy ideas. One of them was that Moses was 10 feet high. He said, that's wrong, it's 10 cubits, that's like 5 meters high, it's like 15 feet. Pharaoh she had was a cucumber size. And then the other thing she mentioned was, and you get this picture of the world to come, not the world to come after the reincarnation, rather just the world to come of the Mashiach. And he's got candy growing on trees. So, okay, is this the level that this is the best Judaism can teach kids? You don't have anything better. So he wrote a very, very nice response about why we hold so much from these metaphors, even though clearly at some point you have to go beyond the metaphor. You have to understand, I was taught this because that's what I understood when I was 6, 7, 8. That's how you get through to a child. So, but why not teach me right away something harder, and then I'll slowly come to understand it and feel it and so on.
Harder, complex.
Toda rabah. So why not do that? He says because there's value in the metaphors themselves. These metaphors, they have some. What's the value? One could say that the value is that it both captures, in a certain sense, the abstract idea, but it also, the fact that it can bring it down to a child, is a feat in and of itself. It's an art form in and of itself. How do you actually take something that abstract and give it to a child in a way that will really cover what the abstract point was? So there's value to them in and of themselves. That's why we have Midrash. We kept them because they mean something. They have meaning. So this same thing here is. No. So the most that the emunah can grasp is something that is graspable for the person.
What for the person?
That the person can conceive of, can understand. Yeah. Otherwise, there's no point. It has to be so. And that's called Memala and Sovev. And what does it mean? It means how God is bringing creation into being with what we call his measure of kingdom. Why is measure of kingdom? Because that's what we said before, that kingdom is like the lowest aspect of of God that we can perceive. We understand that he wants to be king. That's the way we conceive of him. And from that we understand everything that comes after that. That's how we understand his will to create. We understand it as the kingdom of Hashem. Now he goes into, it's very interesting how he wrote this, because now he tells us where he explained this in the book itself. The Tzemach Tzedek tells us where else in Derech Mitzvosecha he dealt with this. And he says it's in Mitzvah Kafhei, Perek Aleph, and there it says that it's Mimar Kol Amin, and that it's the integrated light. And there we use this concept of from my flesh I will envision God. And so from my flesh is definitely, I think we even talked about it, that flesh and feeling in Hebrew are almost the same word. Basar and regesh. So why the same word? Because basar is equal to 502, and regesh is equal to 503. So it's with the kolel. That's one way that it's written. That to have a sense of something, how do we? But it's also true. Where are our senses? They're in our flesh. That's how we understand to have a sense of something, to have an ability to grasp something. And it's also sovev shulemala ma'chochma v'no mitlabesh ba'amin k'neshama b'guf. And that was explained in Mitzvah Taf Yud Zayin in the first chapter. So these are the two mitzvahs, Hamanat Elokut and I think Yesod Tefillah. And really, גם הסובב הוא הערה בעלמא מהותו ועצמותו יתברך כמבואר מעניין הצמצום מקום פנוי, שהיה בבחינת אורו וזיוו יתברך לבד, ואותו האור שלמעלה מהצמצום נקרא סובב, ואינו בערך עצמותו הנקרא מאור. כמו שכתוב קצת מצווה כ"ה ריש פרק ו'. In any case, he says, I dealt with this in other places, why it's only limited to that. It's limited to the Sovev and to the Mamale. That's as far as Emunah can go. כידוע בעניין יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, פירוש, מה שבפי כל הברואים השגת אלוקות אינו אלא שמך מידת מלכותו כוח הפועל בנפעל. And this is what we call that your name will be blessed by all that are alive. And it says that, what does this mean? That what people are able to say, all this, meaning everything that we can conceive of in God, this is in our mouth. Befi kol chai. It's all we can say. Why all we can say? What's that got to do with anything? So first of all, we can express it. And every form of expression is what we call the kingdom of Hashem. It's Hashem expressing itself. It's us expressing ourselves. In any case, again, it's limited. That's the memale. And again, ובחינת סובב כל המין הוא למעלה מהשגתם לגמרי, ואומרים קדוש השם, וגם זאת בכלל אמונה תחשב שמשיגים מאמינים איכשהו קדוש ומבדל. And the Sovev, another explanation is that's what we say, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. We say 3 times, that's what the 3 mitzvahs that we didn't learn all through, we just learned 2. Sanctifying God's name and desecrating his name. And all this has to do, that's Sovev already. Why is that Sovev? Because here I'm saying Kadosh, it's separate. Kadosh, we said, means separate. He's separate, separate, separate. But all that is also only talking about the Sovev. That's also talking all about the transcendent light. Here's the main point now. But if we go beyond the confines of creation, beyond the transcendent and the immanent, there emunah doesn't reach. You've never heard a statement like that, right? First time you're hearing this. It's one of the most surprising statements in this mimer. It says, what do you want? You want emunah to start telling you things about things that you can't perceive, that you can't. What's the point in that? The whole idea of emunah is, like we said, that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov came to this by their natural sense of the world. They understood this from the world. They extrapolated it out of their experience. They said that we don't have to take the long road. We're going to give them the short route. The short route is that we're going to give it to you, even without you having to do the work. We're just going to teach you from infancy that this is what we came to. And Moses is going to continue to sustain this in you. That's his job. But know that this is only going to go as far as what you can perceive, whether it be what you can express, that's called the mamala, that's malchus, that's the kingdom, or what you can abstractly conceive of, which is the surrounding light, called the sovev. But both of these, the sovev and the mamala, the circle and the line, they're within nature. They're not within nature, but within creation. So emunah is limited to that.
Why do you believe that there's things that we don't know?
Of course, but you can't believe it. What are you going to believe? All you're saying is, when I say transcendent, there's something beyond. Okay, there's something beyond. I believe there's something beyond. There isn't. I don't know what it's like. I have no idea. But emunah is not something that you cannot conceive of. In other words, that's what we said about the world after the resurrection. The reincarnation, what's it going to be like?
We can't perceive.
I can't perceive that. Ayin lo ra'ata zo l'tcha Elokim. No eye has seen it, no prophet can see it, apart from you, God. That's all we can say about it. A verse from Isaiah. That's it. That's all I know. I know that it's unperceivable for me. So stop telling me stories. I don't need to believe in these stories because it's not faith. It's not belief. It's nothing. I don't need to have this ingrained in me. You don't have to believe this or that about it. There's a limit to what. Again, this is shocking in a certain sense because people tend to think that faith is to describe what you can't. They say, no. Faith is a shortcut to describe something that you could grasp by yourself. Except instead of you having to have it all explained to you from the beginning to the end, then here it is handed to you like you're suckling it from infancy. It's ingrained in you. But you'll see, like you said, that this is a feeling that you have inside. It's not just that it's just some kind of, indoctrination. It's not. It is indoctrination because I'm doing it from a young age, but it fits what you would have figured out by yourself and what you already have inside. And this is an amazing thing. So how do you get to the Atzmos? How do you get to God's essence Himself, God's self? How do you get there? So he says, כי בעצמות אינסוף ברוך הוא אין שום תפיסה למקבלים לומר אפילו שהוא קדוש ומובדל. When it comes to who God really is, I can't even say that He's separate. Because all I can say that what's separate is the transcendent light. That's all I can say. But I can't say that maybe God Himself is not separate. Maybe He is just everything. There I have a problem. I can't have a set of beliefs. Because when it comes to the Atzmus of Hashem, who God is, there I have no tfisa. There I have no perception. I have no way of conceiving what it is. מפני שהקדוש מובדל, היינו לשלול עניין ההתלבשות כנשמה בגוף שהוא ממלא, והשלילה הזאת ייתכן בבחינת האור מתפשט מן ברוך הוא, שהוא הסובב, שהוא קדוש ומובדל, ואינו מתלבש בימין ומחיה אותם בדרך נפלאה מדרך שהנשמה וחיה את הגוף, כמו שכתוב במקום אחר. So everything that we say about God being like a soul in the body, that's all very good, but that's as far as the sovev can go. אבל בעצמותו ומהותו, גם קדוש לא ייתכן לומר. You can't even say that He's holy. You can't even say that He's separate when it comes to God's essence itself. Why is this so important to Him? Because there is something that gets there.
There is something
that reaches that high. What reaches that high? Mitzvos.
You mean that's the... Yeah,
right. Yeah. So that's going to be next week, the whole part about the mitzvos.
No, I just realized, and it's so simple, but it's like we're talking about that a Jewish child has in its essence a kli.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course.
And I realize, let's say that kli is abstraction, round.
Mm-hmm.
Now I realize that the way I was raised, they were putting a square
into a round peg, trying to square the peg.
So, but I mean, this is a real puzzle.
Right.
But it's sometimes you have to.
Right. It's not tabula rasa. There is an inclination already.
Of course there is. Yeah. And when that's
disturbed, it's very disturbing.
Exactly, that's disturbed. Yeah.